was a man who had some land in eastern Washington. And on his land, this man, he had a deep, dark hole upon. People came from miles around to throw their trash down in to see how deep the hole was and listen for its end.
Now, back in time to a great past show on Night Dreams Radio.
Yes, you are, ladies and gentlemen. This is Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer, coming at you from Night Dreams Talk Radio. And I am really excited tonight because I have a guest on that is so popular on these very, very interesting talk shows that I have been kind of hounding him for a while. And so I've been able to get on our show tonight Ronald Farnham, who is going to tell us some really interesting inside info that we have probably heard rumors about. But this is the gentleman who actually served our country in the Department of Defense and in military branches in the past, who is now going to come forth and tell us some of the real truths that's going on there. Without further ado, I'm going to just bring him on the line, and we will start talking, and I'll introduce you all to Ronald Farnham. Hey, Ronald, are you there now?
Hey, Michael. Good to talk to you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the intro.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, like I said, you are becoming quite a hot item here on the internet radios, and of course the videos out there. You know, I saw you on various other programs, and I said, hey, now this is a guy that I'd like to talk to, because being what they call the paranormal lawyer nowadays, I think you and I could have some pretty good discussions here over the next few minutes at least, and see what we can come out and bring out to the public here.
Yeah, I think that, especially since you're a lawyer, because from my research for a while now, and it's funny because it's all of a sudden I'm starting to get some traction doing some talk shows and doing interviews, but I've been working at this for, golly, more than 10 years now. Like, in fact, I heard it takes about 10 years to make it in Hollywood. So yeah. It's taken me about 12 years right now to start getting to a point where I can start doing some meaningful interviews, and people are starting to wake up and pay attention. And because you're a lawyer, I think you know this more than anything. The public at large, the general public, they don't really speak legal English. It's been kept from the public. And so, like tonight, I really want to get into how important it is to understand the different types of English that there are. You know, you have slang English, you have formal English, and then you have legal English. And legal English, that's where the words of art are. And so I'm so glad to finally be able to talk to somebody on the record, kind of, because that's what these shows are really about, too, is going on the record and getting some critical information out there for your listeners so that they can move forward from tonight with a clearer understanding, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding about their relationship with what's going on in this war, in this United States, with their relationship with the so-called government, you know. And I'm Michael, I'm so glad that we're going to be able to like talk about a few things that are really crucial and important.
Oh, definitely. Matter of fact, you kind of hit the nail right on the head for me, because I tell you what, I went to law school quite a few years ago. I've been a lawyer now for 30 years, but the first thing I had to learn when I went to law school was the idea that there was a whole other language being spoken. And it wasn't necessarily Latin, although there's a lot of Latin words that you have to learn in the law. But there was a whole different language that was spoken, and you're correct. I can't wait to get into that tonight as well. But how about this? Why don't we have you do just a short little intro about yourself and your military background as well, just to kind of give people up to speed, and then we'll get into whatever topic you want to jump into right away.
Well, I grew up with a real intense interest in science and reality and kind of figuring out numbers and math. And I was always into math and science in school. And I was really a truth seeker from the time I was a little kid. And then as I got older, I was really into patriotism, serving the kind of the world and the country. And I wanted to work for the CIA from the time I was young. I wanted to kind of be in that world of espionage and intrigue and knowing what's going on behind those closed doors, knowing what the real operations and mechanisms are that are running everything behind the scenes. So I decided to go into the Army because I was at a point in college where I had my associate's degree and I was working towards my bachelor's, but I really wanted to jump into the CIA, and I knew I needed a bachelor's degree in the language and the clearance. So I joined the Army Intelligence and got my bachelor's degree, and I got my clearance, my top secret clearance, and I learned Korean. I became a Korean linguist, and a signals intelligence analyst. And I worked at some of the major commands, Central Command, Special Operations Command, Southern Command. And I was a counterterrorism analyst, a liaison. And around 2006, I had really kind of started crossing over into to working on commercials and movies and being a commercial spokesperson. And I was kind of enjoying that world better than what I was doing for the Department of Defense, which was spying and helping kind of this self-licking ice cream cone called the Department of Defense kind of perpetuate terrorists, the war on terror, the global war on terror, the GWAT. And so I decided to quit and make it a full-time career to enlighten people to the truth about what's going on really across Earth with the Department of Defense, because I reached a point where the National Security Agency, I had gone to them with a solution. I was working at Headquarters Special Operations Command as the Pathfinder trainer, which is a software platform that teaches Special Forces analysts how to exploit intelligence. And the NSA had emailed a couple of us individuals who have worked counterterrorism and terrorism for a long time about a solution. So I gave them a solution on how to stop terrorist activity, and they didn't want to do it. The next day they called me into the office, and my superiors were like, "Hey, did you send this email to the National Security Agency?" And I said, "Yeah, they emailed me. They wanted some information on how to stop terrorist activity. This was, some specific stuff." So they disciplined me, and they wanted to pull me off my contract. So I resigned, and I vowed right then that day that I was going to use every resource I had at my disposal and had ever learned, and just everything within myself to help free mankind from this fake war and fake slavery and fake poverty that we've been indoctrinated into. And so, now look at this. I'm starting to being able to get some interviews. I've got some movies and DVDs and some books out there, and the word is starting to spread. And I really figure now I have this solution, and I've come up with a viable, actionable solution. So I want to definitely get into that too, because, I can talk about the problems all day long, and you know the problems. I know the problems. We all know the problems with what's going on. Well, what's the solution? So I'm taking it from a solution standpoint to really just start getting people to say, okay, I can do that. I can take action. Yeah, I'll be a part of this, because we want to be free. And whether you realize it or not, we are not free at all in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and that sounds to me like you were the perfect kind of truth seeker or information seeker to be in the signals intelligence department at that point. So you were exposed to some of these inside info and programs that now you're talking about on the outside, it sounds like.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that people don't really understand, and this is my insight from the inside as an intelligence professional, former intelligence professional, is that that whole story about Edward Snowden that just blew up in the media. They made a major motion picture out of Snowden. They there was all about WikiLeaks and how the National Security Agency is spying. Well, the National Security Agency's job is to spies, to collect, intelligence from all sources. Everything emits a vibration and a signal and information, and so it's collected on. But what the people of the United States or the living souls of the United States who have been converted to citizens, what these citizens have to realize is that it's not really the National Security Agency that you have to worry about, because they're going to do their job, and that's part of their job. That's what they do. But there's this entity that is in the United States called Northern Command. Now, they are a command of the Department of Defense, and they have literally physically invaded the United States. So every command has a J2. For instance, when I was in the Army, I worked for Central Command. And I also lived over in Korea, and I was part of Pacific Command. Every command has its area of responsibility. And Northern Command's area of responsibility is Canada, the United States, and Mexico. That is their area of responsibility. And every command, like for instance, when I worked at Central Command, I also worked at Southern Command. Southern Command's area of responsibility was Mexico, but they turned it over to Northern Command. But now their area of responsibility is Central and South America. So every command has a J2. Whenever I worked for a different command, I worked in the J2. That J2 is the intelligence section of that command. And that intelligence section is in charge of collecting intelligence. So that's one of the things that's important for people to know is we've literally been invaded militarily by a corporation that's posing as a government and is strong-arming people and stealing from them and enslaving them.
Now, that is interesting because, like you mentioned, Edward Snowden, he didn't say anything about that, did he?
No, he didn't. And if you really dig into Edward Snowden's background, you'll see that his parents actually worked for the Department of Defense. They worked in the intelligence community. In fact, I've lived in Maryland, and the headquarters for the National Security Agency is there in Columbia, Maryland. I lived in Columbia, and there's a river that runs through that area called Snowden River Parkway. There's a road and a river. There's Snowden River and Snowden River Parkway. So if you look at the different people who are involved in maybe whistleblowing sometimes, it seems like there's this eerie kind of, a conspicuous connection to them actually being related to the entity that they're kind of going against. Sometimes it's called, it's ordo ab chao, or order out of chaos, where there are kind of patsies put into place to create chaos where the people it makes the people ask for order. It's the
right.
Hegelian dialectic method of problem, reaction, solution. And it directs people to go in a direction that the government, the so-called government, really wants us to go into, which is giving up more of our freedoms.
Yes. Good point. People need to be discerning like that, and it's individuals like yourself that I think are finally allowing people to hear the inside truth so that they can start being a little bit more suspicious, even about some of the whistleblowers that are out there and the information that's coming out. And that's exactly why I wanted to have you on this show tonight, because you are a straight shooter. You are the guy that's been on the inside, and now I believe is going to be part of this wave of information analysts who are going to be able to bring us up to speed on what's really going on right now.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why. Let me ask you, Michael. I think that look at the atmosphere. Just like you said, I'm able to get on the radio now and get on a show and start doing some interviews and coming out and being a straight shooter and giving out this info. Now, I can't think of a time other than now where you as a lawyer would actually be on the radio discussing the information that might kind of go against the entire legal community, or the information that they are trying to protect and secure away from the common citizen. So let me ask you, for instance, and one of the things is I want to bounce this off of you as a legal professional with the background to be able to answer these questions or some of this information accurately for the people who are listening. Because, I've called lawyers